First came the growl. Then the animal loomed into view. It was a jaguar on the hunt right outside their home. The young girl and her mother had every reason to be afraid. Jaguars rarely attack humans, but when they do, it can be fatal. More than this, though, the pair were extremely vulnerable. They lived in a cave. There were no fences, no doors, and nowhere to hide. The young girl's name was Cristiana Mara Calho. Born in 1983 in Diamantina, a colonial mining town in Minas Gerais, Brazil, she was taken to live in the cave just 2 weeks after her birth. Her mother, Petronilla, had needed to escape her abusive brother. Cristiana's father was not around, so she grabbed her baby daughter and fled. Cristiana and her mother, whom she affectionately referred to as Mame, spent the next 5 years clinging on in the wilds of Minas Gerais. Of course, living away from civilization meant contending with serious challenges, such as prowling jaguars. And yet, as time went on, big cats proved to be the least of their worries. Indeed, the jaguar that visited their cave ran off just as quickly as it had appeared. But as Cristiana, who is today known as Christina Rickardson, explained to the New York Post in 2018, they frequently encountered all kinds of dangerous wildlife. Venomous snakes, spiders, and scorpions were common, she said. I'd wake up in the night to swat away giant poisonous centipedes crawling over my body. Day-to-day life for the pair was, of course, rough. Getting enough food was a matter of gathering, scavenging, and hunting whatever was available. One source of protein was wild birds, which they killed with a slingshot. I gained confidence from hunting and scavenging, and still recall my immense pride when I claimed my first bird, which we grilled over our tiny fire pit, said Rickardson. It made a good meal with fruit, berries, and nuts. However, some food staples, such as rice, can only be bought in Diamantina. To earn money, the two would sell dried flowers and leaves, which they carried to town on foot. It was a lengthy walk, and because Cristiana had no shoes, she'd often cut her feet on the rocks. Sometimes she'd beg her mother to stop, but Petronilla ignored her daughter's pleas. Instead, she talked about God and religion. Despite life's hardships, though, young Cristiana enjoyed living in the wilderness. We came close to starvation, but I often look on those years as my best years, she told the New York Post. Mame always had time for me, and I got all her love. We chatted for hours, taking in the beauty of the wilderness, feet dangling over the mouth of the cave. The colors, sights, and sounds were magical. Characterized by rugged, quartz-filled mountains, the land around Diamantina is indeed rich in natural beauty. Blooming with bromeliads and delicate orchids, tracts of forest cloak the region's riverbanks. And aside from jaguars, local fauna includes cougars, maned wolves, and giant anteaters. In many respects, the region could be considered a nature lover's paradise. But Cristiana and her mother could not remain in the natural paradise forever. And in the end, it wasn't the wild animals that drove them out. It was a band of men and their dogs. Perhaps they were the landowners, said Rickardson. They didn't catch us, but Mame knew it was time to move on. The city of Sao Paulo, where the pair went next, could not have been any more different from their isolated cave. Located in southeastern Brazil, Sao Paulo is in fact the most heavily populated city in the southern and western hemispheres. With few resources, the little girl and her mother wound up living in a favela. It's a Brazilian slum. To survive, they begged on the streets, and some people threw abuse at them, calling them street rats and roaches. The little girl was often left to her own devices for long stretches of time, so Cristiana befriended another street child named Camille. She became my best friend, said Rickardson. We did everything together. We shared all the food we found equally between us. Camille had an amazing ability to tell stories. They took the pain away from living this reality, at least for a while. One night before Cristiana's 7th birthday, Camille was captured by the military police along with 5 other children. The 6-year-old had managed to escape, but she later backtracked to try and rescue her friend. It was then that she witnessed Camille's execution. She was shot in the head. I lost my friend, my sister, that night, she told the New York Post. I also understood how little our lives were worth. Brazil is in fact notorious for the extrajudicial killing of street children. As recently as 2015, the United Nations published a report accusing the country's military police of conducting an elevated number of summary executions of children. The UN alleged that widespread impunity allowed the killings to happen, and that they were part of a drive to clean streets prior to the 2016 Olympic Games. Shortly after Camille's murder, Cristiana got in a fight with a street boy. She was starving and had just found a morsel of flatbread in some garbage in an alleyway. The boy demanded she give it to him. The little girl refused, so he hit her and took it. Then, as he began walking off, she grabbed a broken bottle and ran at him, and then plunged the glass into his stomach. At first, I felt nothing, she told the New York Post. Then my hand got warm. Blood gushed from the wound. I took the bread from the boy as he screamed and doubled over in pain. After I'd run a fair way, I started eating, but then I started vomiting. The realization of what I'd done hit me. Later, I heard the other kids in the neighborhood talking about a boy who had been found dead in the alley. Some days later, the little girl wasn't sure how many. Petronelia found her daughter living beneath some stairs. After I told her everything, Rickardson explained to the New York Post, she said, "Christiana, promise me something. Promise me that whatever happens in life, never stop walking." I didn't understand, and I asked, "Where shall I go?" She replied, "It doesn't matter, just never stop walking." After Christiana turned 7, she and her 10-month-old brother, Patrick, ended up in an orphanage. Petronelia visited them on Sundays. Then one day, the orphanage prevented their mother from entering. And after Christiana turned 8, a middle-aged Swedish couple, Stuart and Lillian Ann Rickardson, adopted the siblings. At that point, the little girl's name changed to Christina Rickardson. Our new life in Vindeln, Sweden was the exact opposite of Sao Paulo, Rickardson told the New York Post. There was barely a stray piece of paper on the streets, let alone a mountain of garbage. The culture shock was jarring, but I shrugged off Christiana. I learned Swedish and forgot Portuguese in a matter of months. After years of fighting for survival, I had hope for a future. Years later, however, at the age of 31, Rickardson found herself wrecked by an identity crisis. "I looked in the mirror one day and I felt like a non-person," she said. "I needed to reconcile Swedish Christina with Brazilian Christiana." So in 2015, she returned to Brazil. There, she found her mother, now age 67. "It was then that I learned Mame had suffered from schizophrenia all her life," she said. But despite the reunion's challenges, it was also a moment of healing. And today, Rickardson is the founder of a charity orphanage dedicated to street kids. She's also the author of a book about her experiences, Never Stop Walking, a memoir of finding home across the world. The book's title was inspired by the words of Petronelia, who she says gave her enough love, courage, and strength to keep me walking forward through my life.